You are impersonating a service member. Those words fell like a blade in the bustling supply store, but Mrs. Lillian Brooks did not flinch. She simply removed her glasses, placed them on the counter, and stood tall, as if accustomed to such insults. Inside her lay memories no one believed, comrades' bodies hauled from the shores of Zamboanga, orders that existed only in hushed whispers, never on paper, and a silence that had stretched for 4 decades. But today, silence was no longer an option. All right, my dear viewers, brace yourselves for a story that will leave you in awe. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly feel what I'm about to share. Then drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see friends joining us from all around the world. A soft, sharp laugh hissed from the row of uniforms behind her, not loud enough to be called an outright insult, but not so faint as to be dismissed as a mere slip of the tongue. It was just enough to sting in the ears of anyone who understood the true meaning of silence. A deliberate laugh aimed at someone who would not speak. Mrs. Brooks did not turn around, nor did she ask why. She merely removed her glasses, slowly wiped the lenses with the inside cuff of her shirt, then placed them back on the bridge of her nose. Her movements were unhurried, unguarded, and betrayed no emotion. Yet those aged hands trembled for an instant, so slightly that one would scarcely notice unless watching her eyes. And no one there watched her eyes, save for the past she carried in every frayed fold of that old uniform on her shoulders. 14 years of active combat, 4 covert missions, an illegal rescue operation conducted under the code name Non-Existent, all encapsulated in the faded fabric clinging to her chest, where once shone medals, pins, and certificates. All had been stripped from history. She did not exist on paper. No one called her a hero, but she had never needed those words to survive. Only, she had not expected this moment to hurt so much. The pain did not stem from the direct insult, but from the speaker's indifferent calm, from the casual assumption that an elderly black woman in a worn uniform was nothing more than a cosplay joke, a truth spoken with a smile, as if denial required no apology. She had heard far harsher words in secret briefings, where every decision was paid for in lives. But there, amid fire and smoke, she was called by rank, by title, with respect. Here, among neatly hung uniforms, she had become a novelty, a relic no one cared to read. She swallowed dryly, not to hold back tears, but to maintain composure, not out of pride, but out of habit. The habit of someone who learned that silence was the first condition of survival. No reaction, no resistance, no hint of wavering. But this time her spirit wavered, not because she felt insulted, but because she realized none of them knew. They knew nothing. They did not know she had cut the bindings of 2 young soldiers in a cramped Luzon POW barracks, then carried them nearly 3 miles through jungle with her unbandaged arm. Did not know she had stood in the retreat path to buy time for her special ops team to escape by sea. Did not know she had been offered the Medal of Honor, then refused it, because it came with a vow of silence, a denial of all truth. They did not know she was not unworthy. She simply refused to trade her dignity for a false certificate. And because they did not know, they laughed. That laugh, to her, was not frightening. It merely revealed one thing. Though she had accepted oblivion, the thoughtlessness of the next generation still wounded, silently, more persistently than any physical injury. She knew she needed to prove nothing to them. She did not need to produce files, photographs, or testimony. Her history resided not in archives, but in the flesh and blood of those who remained where she once trod, those who did not live long enough to be insulted for their past. And so she remained silent, not out of weakness, but out of self-respect. She tugged her collar up, adjusted her buttons. Her gaze swept the uniforms as if choosing memories. Then, without a word, she walked away, deliberately, without looking back. Her steps unshaken, yet each step laid another weight of memory upon the cold tile floor. She no longer expected recognition, but she hoped, just once, that someone would understand why she still wore that uniform even though it was forbidden to exist in any official record. Maria Cruz stood at the end of the rack, hard hat still in hand, her eyes fixed on Mrs. Brooks as though something inside her had just shattered, something she hadn't yet named. Everything had happened so fast, a half-joking, half-serious taunt, a few soft laughs, and then that woman's refusal to protest, to step back or to speak, just removing her glasses, wiping the lenses, putting them back on, and walking away in silence. But it was that very silence that Maria couldn't look away from. Mrs. Brooks needed no words. She asked no one to understand. The way she stood tall, shoulders squared, gaze lifted, made Maria feel that, though she had uttered no insult herself, she had been complicit in silence. And that realization pricked her heart. Maria was the only one who watched Mrs. Brooks's steps all the way to the door. She did not know who the woman was, but she knew, with absolute clarity, that this woman had carried something the young soldiers around her could never learn in training, something unteachable by rank or regulation, something born of loss, endurance, and unconditional loyalty to a cause greater than herself. She tried to listen to the feeling in her chest, not just pity, not just indignation, but a deep shame at witnessing someone demeaned while she stood mute. She neither spoke up nor intervened. She simply stood still. And that, she realized, made her feel small. For the rest of the day, Mrs. Brooks's image haunted Maria's mind. She went through her tasks mechanically, her thoughts suspended between guilt and a reverent curiosity. She wondered, how could someone so publicly insulted remain so composed? This was not the calm of someone weak, but the poise of someone who had endured 100 times that weight. Maria could not let it remain merely a feeling. She needed answers. She needed to know who Mrs. Brooks was. That very evening she hunted down the woman's name from the supply receipt. With help from a friend in the records office, Maria unearthed her full name and former unit. But when she searched the internal database, almost nothing appeared. Practically a blank. No personnel file, no record of honors, no photographs, no image archives. Even her medical file was sealed. Maria stared at the blank screen for a long time. She could not understand how a seasoned, older soldier, registered for retirement from the base, could be erased from the system like this. That question stuck to her like an unhealing scratch. She began exploring other avenues, calling the archives clerk at Norfolk Naval Base, interviewing an old sailor who recalled seeing Mrs. Brooks in Luzon sometime in the 80s, but no one could confirm it. Scattered fragments like bones strewn about without a body. Yet they all shared one thing. Her existence was acknowledged, in whispers, in doubt, but in no official capacity. The deeper Maria dug, the more she realized. Something had been buried. A mission, a unit, a story once real, but somehow expunged from the official record. And the woman she had let be insulted that day was the sole living witness left. That truth made Maria's chest tighten. She began taking notes, connecting dots, making discreet inquiries. But she did so quietly. Each step of her investigation was carried out in silence. She knew something far greater awaited revelation, not just to restore honor to a forgotten soldier, but to vindicate the values the military had taught her: honesty, integrity, responsibility. And in that moment, Maria understood. This was no longer Mrs. Brooks's story alone. It was the story of all those quietly erased from memory, of those who lived through eras no one dared mention, and she, through her own silence that day, had been drawn into that very story, unable to retreat and unwilling to turn back. Maria arrived at Norfolk with unsteady steps and an unprecedented resolve. She had called ahead and arranged a brief meeting with Lieutenant Colonel John Bradley, the man whose archived records noted he had served in the same unit as Mrs. Brooks. He said little on the phone. He only asked her to bring whatever she had. His tone was calm, yet beneath it lay an old inflection, as though she had awakened something he had locked away years before. When she entered his office in the military archives, Maria did not expect a warm welcome, and, as she'd guessed, Colonel Bradley asked no questions. He merely looked at her, then drew out a chair. His face bore the lines of time, but his eyes still shone, the kind of light belonging to those who'd seen what others could never comprehend. He handed her a sealed envelope, placed his hand on it, and remained silent for a long moment before releasing it. "You will find nothing in the system," he said softly, eyes drifting afar. "But here is the part they cannot erase." Maria did not open the envelope immediately. She waited until she left the base, seated alone in her car. Inside lay an old dossier, yellowed pages, accompanied by several black and white photographs, faded, yet enough for her to recognize Mrs. Brooks's face among a small, fully armed team standing in rugged terrain that looked like jungle. Another photo showed Mrs. Brooks crouched, bandaging a wounded young soldier. No medals, no salute, only calm eyes and skilled hands. Beneath each image were handwritten captions, neat, slanted script, brief entries describing the scenarios. Rescue at point G7, 2 hostages safe, 1 casualty. No support signal, unilateral action, success. Maria handled each page with reverence, reading slowly as though fearful of missing something sacred. Each line revealed another piece of the puzzle she was piecing together. The largest revelation lay in the final report, signed in Colonel Bradley's own hand, detailing Operation Pacific Dawn, a 3-day, top-secret mission in Luzon, Philippines. The content was brief but clear. 6 American pilots captured in an unauthorized prison camp run by insurgents. The U.S. government unable to intervene officially. An internal special ops unit deployed. No call sign, no identifying uniform, no official record. Only a 7-member team. And the commander, Captain Lillian Brooks. Maria paused at that name. Her heart skipped a beat, half from amazement, half from shame. Mrs. Brooks's name appeared in no public record, yet headed a mission that, if acknowledged, would be etched into history. And there, in Bradley's handwritten addendum, she read, "Initial orders, Rescue 4, withdraw immediately. Brooks refused, remained an additional 8 hours to rescue the final 2, lost contact. The team feared she had fallen, but she returned, leading all 6 pilots and the body of the youngest team member." That story was absent from the press and never taught in any training course, yet it was real, living in every handwritten word, every stain of time. It sent a chill through Maria, not from the bravery itself, but from how history could be distorted by a simple administrative decision. She understood why Mrs. Brooks had vanished from the system, someone who refused to sign a secrecy affidavit, who would not let her history be bound by silence, would never exist in sealed files. But that only made her story more compelling than any official record. Maria closed the dossier. She no longer felt like a young admirer of an old hero, but a witness, fortunate to glimpse the fragment of memory someone had preserved, not for pride, but waiting for the right person to seek it out. And she knew she had come at the right time. All right, dear viewers, relax a moment or take a sip of water, then stay tuned. There are more surprises ahead. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see friends joining us from across the globe. Comment 1. If you find this story compelling, so we can continue bringing you more great stories. The hearing room was kept secure. Chairs were arranged in neat rows. Nameplates lined the table as though for a high-level military conference. Everyone was present on time, from the generals to the national security advisor. No one spoke quietly with another. No polite laughter rang out. The air was taut, not from pressure, but from something more silent and weighty, as if everyone knew that what was about to happen lay beyond mere procedure. Mrs. Brooks was invited in. No escort, no formal introduction. She opened the door herself and entered on legs that had once carried her across battlefields, through hours without backup. Her old uniform was freshly pressed, collar buttoned, black shoes polished. Each step she took toward the witness table was neither fast nor slow, but enough to force everyone to look straight ahead. No one stood, yet all sat up straighter. She sat down, hands placed on the table. She carried no files, held no papers, did not glance at notes. When asked to speak, she merely nodded and began. Her voice was neither loud nor soft. It was just enough to command attention. There was something in that tone, a surprising warmth, yet an invisible force that made the uniformed officers feel smaller. Not because they were afraid, but because they understood. They were listening to someone who had faced what few dared confront. She did not ramble. She did not follow a strict order. She began in the middle, at the fiercest point of the ambush. She described the moment the entire team was trapped in a mountain pass, when the comms went dark, and a young soldier panicked and leapt from cover, nearly blowing their position. In that instant, she stepped out, unarmed, calling out in the local dialect she had learned in special training. She did so to draw fire, and succeeded. She was wounded in her right leg. A bullet tore through her thigh, yet she did not fall. She still ordered the rear guard to withdraw. She turned back at the sound of a pilot's groan from the wooden shack. She carried him out, his weight nearly her own, blood streaming from calf to heel. She spoke slowly, but without tremor. No tears fell. She used no words like sacrifice, heroic, or brave. She spoke only the unvarnished truth. When someone asked why she did not accept a medal, she looked up, her gaze unwavering. She said she did not refuse the medal. She refused its conditions. "I will not sign a document that demands my silence about those who died," she said. "I will not agree to turn their story into a permanent secret, only for 30 years from now to ensure no one remembers why they fell." The entire room fell silent. No pens tapped, no coughs echoed. A national security advisor asked whether she regretted declining the path to honor, the path that would have secured her recognition, promotion, and a ceremonious retirement. Without hesitation, she replied that if honor only came when one agreed to forget what was right, then that honor was not worth having. She spoke, slowly but firmly, each word deliberate. If I must choose between being known as a false hero or being forgotten while remaining true to the facts, I choose the latter. Lieutenant Colonel Bradley, seated behind the desk row, had red-rimmed eyes. He did not intervene. He simply listened as though repaying an old debt. The others, some flipping through documents, others staring at her, felt that this was not just a hearing. It was a testimony, and what was affirmed that day was not only the truth of the battlefield, but the truth of a person's resolve who chose oblivion rather than betrayal of memory. When she finished, no one applauded, yet all rose as she left her seat, and for the first time in many years, she did not feel alone in her own story. The ceremony was not loudly advertised. No live broadcast took place, yet every person present that day understood. This was a moment to witness with one's own eyes and heart. Mrs. Brooks was escorted to Arlington in a simple military vehicle. No honor guard, no flag-draped casket, merely an elderly black woman, wearing the very uniform once mocked, now pressed to every seam, stepping down amid the gazes of those who had thought they would never see her again. As she ascended the dais, there was no applause, not a single superfluous sound, only the collective hush of hundreds of souls, each carrying a fragment of memory for which she stood at the center, and which enabled them to stand there. The general tasked with presenting the medal did not deliver a lengthy speech. He had no need to. Everything had been spoken in the hearing room. All reasons, all evidence, all that needed acknowledgement, made clear. Now was not the time to persuade, but to bestow. When the medal's box was opened, its golden gleam reflected upon Mrs. Brooks's face like a sudden beam of light, not blinding, not dazzling, yet enough to render onlookers motionless. She did not bow her head, nor did she look upward in triumph. She merely gazed at the medal as though beholding the faces of each fallen soldier. Her hand, still trembling slightly from old habit, rose to her left chest, directly over her heart. As the military hymn began to swell, the rescue team of old rose in unison. They did not weep, yet tears brimmed in every eye. The eldest leaned on his cane. The youngest, then 19, now middle-aged with flecks of gray, stood firm, all bearing something nameless, something felt but unspoken. Lieutenant Colonel Bradley stood at the left corner, unmoving, his gaze fixed forward, posture still rigid, yet his hands clenched behind his back, as if to hold back what welled in his eyes. He had witnessed war's worst, but never had he seen such courage, a lifetime of silence, unclaimed, unremembered. When the hymn concluded, Mrs. Brooks turned toward the crowd. She spoke no words of thanks. She offered no address. She only looked, her eyes serene, yet deep within them echoed 1,000 echoes, 1,000 steps, 1,000 nights waiting for comrades who never returned. Then she placed her right hand over her chest and bowed, not to salute the officers, but as a belated farewell to those unable to attend today's ceremony. A brief moment, yet all who were there will remember it forever. From a woman once ridiculed in a supply store, from a faded uniform once deemed a joke, from a file scrubbed from every system, she received what she had never demanded, the truth. But what left people speechless was not the medal, it was the way she received it, not as an honor but as a final duty fulfilled, as though all these years she had kept her promise to those who were lost, that if one day someone asked, she would tell. And today, she did. Not with tears, but through her very presence. In the days following the ceremony, no major headlines appeared, yet those who witnessed knew. Something had been made right. A forgetfulness had been remembered. And one person who stepped out of darkness so as not to betray the truth had finally been brought into the light she deserved. A year after the honor ceremony, Maria Cruz stood at the podium of West Point Military Academy, no longer a sergeant, but as a guest lecturer. She did not teach tactics, nor did she dwell on geopolitics. She told stories, stories not found in curricula, not printed in textbooks. Each of her classes began with a small photograph, a simple relic, and ended with an open question. What is honor, if no one ever witnesses it? Captain Brooks's name was now engraved on a brass plaque, but more significant were the things that could not be carved in metal. Her quiet influence spreading through every classroom, every conversation, every steady gaze of the new generation. When Congress passed the Brooks Act, there was little debate, almost unanimous consensus. A brief statute, yet weighty in meaning. All service members who participated in classified operations, even if their names cannot be publicly listed, deserve protection of their honor and dignity upon return to civilian life. The law did not resurrect burned files, but it restored the right to exist to those once forced into oblivion. At the Norfolk Military Museum, a modest exhibit titled Pacific Dawn was installed. No grand technology, no interactive displays, just a single room with Mrs. Brooks's faded uniform hanging in a glass case beside the Medal of Honor that had lain forgotten in a drawer for over 30 years. Above it, a handwritten line captured from the letter Mrs. Brooks left to Maria. We do not live forever, but we can live on in those who know what is right. Short and succinct, just as she lived, but carrying the immortality of a belief that cannot be buried. Visitors to the exhibit were silent. They stood long before the uniform, long before the inscription. A 12-year-old boy asked his father, "Who was she?" And his father replied, "She's someone you should learn from, how to stay silent when the truth must wait." One late afternoon, Maria returned to the museum and looked at that uniform as if for the first time. She did not cry, yet inside there was a quiet stirring, as though all she had done since meeting Mrs. Brooks had finally found its rightful place. Some people leave no battle honors, only direction. And Mrs. Brooks was one of them. Her story did not end with a medal, nor stop at a law. It lives on through the choices of young people who now understand. Honor is not something bestowed upon us. It is something we preserve even when there is nothing left to hold. If you've watched this video to the very end, we thank you, not just for following a story, but for taking the time to reflect. You may never have served in the military. You may know no one who performed classified missions, but you can be the one to tell this story, to keep it alive. If this narrative moved you, please subscribe so we can continue sharing memories that deserve to be heard. Leave us a comment to let us know. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? Has anyone in your family ever worn a uniform? And if you believe this is a story worth spreading, share it with friends and loved ones, especially those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. For perhaps in their silence lies another untold story.